Greetings, friends, in the Cross Culturals Ministries class. We are about to embark on a journey together. I'm going to be posting 3 more lectures on Tuesday so that you can watch those and make your responses as per the syllabus. But I wanted to go ahead and post this one early so that you get a chance to maybe get to know me a little bit better as we embark upon this journey together over the next 8 weeks. My name is Dr. Jeff Stark. I'm an associate professor here at Olivet, brand new to the team, and looking forward to taking this journey with you. I am currently the pastor of Bridgeway Community Church in Pekin, Illinois. I'll tell you a little bit about how I arrived there here in just a moment. Now, the Cross Cultural Ministries class is a class that I'm really excited to have the opportunity to spend time learning with you as we wrestle through the text together, as we challenge one another. And I'm praying that some of our contexts that we find ourselves in, some of the conversations that we have, will sharpen me as much as it does you. I intend to bring in some folks from time to time via video that will also speak to us about cross-cultural ministry, especially some of my friends in the urban context who seem to be swimming in cross-cultural opportunities pretty consistently. And so I'm looking forward to them and introducing to you them as we make our way through. So I grew up in a small town in Ohio, not very big at all and not very diverse, to be honest with you. It was a fairly Caucasian community, pretty middle class, a little bit of blue collar. I sort of grew up in what I would consider a blue collar world, even though my dad was a business owner. I would very much consider myself someone who's been influenced by sort of the white blue collar world. I graduated high school, went off to college, and that was in many ways my first exposure to culture shock, because no longer was I just among those who were like me. I now found myself within a diverse community, and I appreciated that deeply. I loved the idea of being amongst those that were different and from whom I would have to learn. And I think I took that pretty seriously for my undergraduate degree. But my level of cross-cultural engagement went a whole nother level after I graduated from Otterbein University in Columbus, Ohio. I enlisted in the United States Army. I wasn't a follower of Christ at the time. I was graduating with an English literature degree and no teaching certificate, so no one wants to hire you, so you end up joining the military. So I joined the military, and basic training itself was a cross-cultural experience, I would say. But beyond that, I actually tested high enough to be considered for the position of a linguist, which meant I was shipped off to Monterey, California for a year and a half and taught Arabic. So I'm an Arabic linguist, and I spent a year and a half of my life surrounded by native-born Middle Easterners, all of whom their first language was Arabic. They taught us, many of whom had sought political asylum, and most of whom were Muslim. And so that was sort of my life experience for about a year and a half, and there was a deep appreciation and value that I had for that experience. It's really colored and shaped. So the experiences that we have often color the shape and the lens through which we see certain circumstances and situations that we find ourselves in the world. And so when you consistently hear about Islam and sort of its rabid, violent tendencies, that wasn't my experience with the men and women who taught me for a year and a half. My experience with them was much different. Here was a group of people that were incredibly hospitable, who were gracious, who cared deeply for us, who wanted to step into our world and invited us to step into theirs. I saw people who cared deeply about their family and really wanted some of the very things that we wanted for our families. And so it was a beautiful experience, I think, for me that broke down what I believe could have been some stereotypes given my background and my growing up. Now, being in the military itself is a cross-cultural experience because you find yourself with men and women literally from every place in society, rich, poor, black, white, Asian, Latino, everything, and you're sort of all put together. Now you're stripped of some of your core identity because you're sort of dressed down and then redressed to be a soldier. So you understand yourself primarily first as a soldier, and so some of those cross-cultural context that we found ourselves in, there was an overarching umbrella of military that I think helped us to navigate some of those, what I believe would have been complex spaces. But then from there, I deployed to Kosovo and Macedonia, which, and again, that was very much a cross-cultural experience for me. I was there for 6 months, and I was a part of a tactical unit that was really out amongst the people most of the time. And so I was in villages, and I was having interaction with the people in those communities via linguists that we had with us. We heard their stories. We saw them. We had to listen and learn from them. We had to discern, making our way through it. All of this time, as God is sort of building my appreciation for diversity, for the other, even before I would have understood or known to call it the other, even before all of that, I had this deep impression of the beauty of diversity and what we can learn from one another when we divest ourselves of power, which we'll talk about in one of our lectures this week, this idea of divestment of power in situations in which we want to understand who it is that we find ourselves amongst. So that was key for me. I came to Christ while I was in the military, radically changed my life. I was stationed in Clarksville, Tennessee, which is a sort of a weird town in the South. It's like the most non-South town you can imagine. It's this community that is very diverse because of the nature of the military base, the 101st Airborne Division that is there. It's got a university, Austin Peay State University there, but it's also sort of a bedroom community of Nashville, and so very much this melting pot of people in that community, and I found myself enmeshed in it regularly. Though the church that I was serving at during that time for about 7 years, I would say it was primarily Caucasian and middle class. We were far enough from the base that most even the soldiers we got were officers in special forces, and so there was a higher level of income, which shapes the culture. I mean, so our culture is not only shaped by our ethnic background, by our racial profile, but it's also shaped by economic status or by political orientation. All of these things that I think influence and affect our ability to span the distance that separates us from the other. And so I pastored there. Then I went to the Deep South. I went to a small rural community for 5 years in a town called Aaron, Tennessee, and that was very much disruptive for me. It was cross-cultural for me in the sense that I am not a Southern boy. I had never shot or tried to kill anything, animals, in my life. But I knew that if I was going to be a part of this community, there were certain rhythms that I needed to embrace and an enculturation that I needed to experience if I was gonna be effective in engaging the people that I found myself among. And so I made that my priority. During this disruptive time between Clarksville and this small rural town, I went to Vanderbilt University for one of my master's degrees, which could not have been a more meaningful and helpful time when it comes to cross-cultural engagement. Vanderbilt University's master's program is an incredibly diverse group of people theologically, but also even socially and culturally. So it has a strong emphasis on what I would call minority hermeneutics, and so it's this idea of how do minority cultures within the United States view or understand the biblical texts and make sense of them. They also worked very diligently in LGBTQ studies there at Vanderbilt, and then also just had a profound sense of religion as a whole, and some of whom in my class and coursework weren't Christians, some were of other religions, and so I found myself in these classes, taking classes on racial reconciliation, recognizing for the first time in my life, and we're going to talk about this more in this course, how much privilege and power that I have been afforded in my life without even truly understanding the impact that has had upon me. And so I would say at an academic level, I think I've always sort of inherently sort of experienced these things, though I wouldn't have known how to name many of these things. But in an academic setting that could lead me through the journey, I really started to wrestle and come to terms with who I was as I found myself amongst the other. I found myself being quieted in some of the classes that I found myself partaking in because I was the one that generally got the voice. That's part of the power dynamics, the cultural dynamics that I found myself in. And I would actually have men and women of faith from different cultures, backgrounds, ethnic diversity, and racial profile that they would then begin to quiet me. They would say, "Jeff, you always get to have a voice. Can we talk now?" And man, that was a profound and powerful moment for me, and I think extremely helpful for me in this process. And it's really helped me to rethink maybe how I understood myself in this world and how to span the distance, like I said, the gaps that exist between us and the other. And so I think those are some of the key and primary aspects that informed my experiences cross-culturally. I've been to Costa Rica and Panama. I've been to Nairobi. These are all communities and places that I have found myself in. And I've had to listen, and I've had to learn, and I've had to grow with people who see this world wildly differently than I do. And I've come to discover that as I've taken that journey with them, not only do I appreciate that they see the world different than I do, but sometimes the way they see the world is more rightly oriented than what I have been taught to see it. Too often we are indoctrinated or enculturated into modes of thought that we don't even realize become restrictions to our imagination of what this world could be. And it requires our engagement with the other to break some of that open for us, to gain a deeper, wider, broader horizon or understanding capacity to imagine a future, imagine a way forward different than we currently find ourselves in. So that's a little bit about me. We're going to take a great journey. Lecture 1. I'm not only going to do lecture 1, but I'm also going to give you a little bit of background for the class. You can expect about 3 to 4 lectures a week, each one about 10 minutes long. We're going to try to keep this in a way that you can watch it in a setting. And then we're going to engage with it. And we're going to engage with the text. We're going to engage with each other. But I'm hoping that in this process, you begin to come to understand your engagement within cross-cultural context and how it can shape the ministry that you find yourself called to. So that's a little bit about my story. I'm currently a part of Pekin Bridgeway Community Church. We're a church planting church that seeks to ignite a movement of culturally relevant, radically relevant, rapidly reproducing churches, spreading hope throughout the world. That's sort of our vision. And so we're all about planting churches, engaging new communities, and seeing what God can do more broadly than the little secluded area that we kind of find ourselves in currently. So that's a little bit about me, and we will talk a little bit more as we move forward together. Thanks.